Okay, hello everyone. Hello Outside In Festival artists. Thank you so much for all being here and for all doing our Zoom waves. Why do we all wave with two hands on Zoom? I don't understand it, but hey, we all do it. I'm Beth, I'm the Artistic Director of Poplar Union, and with us right now we have got the artists, almost all of the artists. There is one missing who I'm hoping is going to join any moment now. But we have all of the artists whose work has been displayed on our YouTube channel today as part of the first day of our festival. So I will try to keep my speaking to a minimum because it's the artists that we want to hear from today. But before we get to them, just to say, Outside In is our first ever digital festival. It's not something I think we had ever thought about doing, but we're so excited to have done it under the sort of conditions that we're in. Everything has moved online, but the results of this process have been incredible. So that's great. And just a bit more context also about how this works. So we have commissioned 18 artists and companies to respond to a theme. We gave a very simple brief, which was looking out, looking in, looking up, and companies and artists were asked to respond to this in whatever way they feel it speaks to them. It doesn't have to be about COVID. It could have been about anything, but something that was timely and sort of relevant to the world we find ourselves in now. And the results were pretty incredible and very diverse as well, which is one of the things we're going to talk about today. So I'm going to keep glancing over here so I can check my questions. But yeah, so without further ado, let's go straight into these burning questions that I have. And the first question is, it's sort of aimed at Sangeeta, Pillai and Akeim Toussaint, who are both here with us right now, but we'll let them answer separately. But what struck me watching both of your videos, so Sangeeta is comes from a sort of poetry. Well, this piece is very much sort of quite an intimate poem, sort of spoken word piece. And Akeim obviously comes from a dance and music background. But what was interesting was the level of like introspection, and there was a lot around dreams and imagining and mental health and how you sort of feel in those isolated circumstances. So it would be great to hear perhaps from Sangeeta first a bit about that process and how you came to those sort of ideas and conclusions, I guess, in the work that you produced.
Yeah, absolutely. I think for me, it felt like I couldn't not look at the journey of COVID and isolation and kind of my own personal journey, because it was very intense for me, as well as it has been for a lot of people, I think. And I felt like the one thing, so we were talking about statistics and, infection rates and whatever, and deaths and all of these kind of figures and facts, but we weren't talking about at all the internal journey. And I think every single person that I know has probably had some sort of mental health impact from COVID, I think. And for me, it was very intense. So I suffer from kind of mental health issues anyway. I've got PTSD and anxiety and depression. And it just felt like COVID compacted everything and intensified everything. And it became like a really visceral, really intense experience that I couldn't not talk about within the piece, I think. So for me, it was very much going inward and trying to put into words some of the emotions and feelings that I experienced during that time. And kind of for me, it was kind of looking in and looking out of kind of the life that I thought I had and the life that I was in. And actually being stuck in that made me relook at the life that I thought I had as well. So it's quite an interesting journey for me personally, I think. It was quite difficult to put down into words as well, because it felt really close to the bone, a lot of it. But I feel like as writers and artists, creative people, really, that's kind of what we do. Exactly. We kind of look inwards, show our wounds, and kind of other people say, oh yeah, that feels familiar, that happens to me too. And that's kind of the journey. So that's what it was like for me.
Fantastic. And in like I say, in a sort of similar way, with Akeim's work, so it is still this very introspective, reflective piece of work. But I think what was interesting looking at your work together actually was that you sort of spoke about those ideas, but Sangeeta, you put yourself in this huge open field. And then with Akeim's work, we see him in this really contained house and then opening up outside into this really imagined sort of, yeah, this land of imagination and dream. And I'm wondering, Akeim, I know you are on the move, whether you can whether you're able to reflect on that with us.
Yeah, I can actually. I was trying to get into this pub, but I've got to take all these details from me in order for me to sit down. Anyways, yeah, I felt my process with my film was basically I was reflecting back on poetry that I've written years ago, and the poem "The Corner," which is like the last section of the film. When I was reading it, it just felt so much like the emotions that I was feeling because of COVID, in terms of the isolation, the sense of being in a corner, the sense of feeling like you're a part of a bigger picture, but at the same time you're just this isolated form within this bigger structure. And that's pretty much what I feel like COVID has also done to us all, is kind of made us take a look at ourselves and take a look at what we live in, and question it. And for me, making the film was really about that process, and about looking inward, a lot of looking inward, which has happened through COVID. There's so much time to reflect, kind of gives you it gives you an opportunity to redirect yourself, it feels. And it felt like the film, like even the end of the film, the sense of there is no corner, there's actually no corner. So how do we actually take a negative situation and create a positive opportunity? Yeah, that's pretty much the little message that I wanted to leave with there.
Yeah, fantastic. And I think that really comes out actually in a lot of the work that was shown today, and I know similarly with some of the work that's coming tomorrow, is that even though you're all confronted with this incredibly bleak, I mean, we're all confronted with this hugely overwhelming thing. One of the things I really enjoyed in watching the videos was that very few of, I don't think any of them end on a note of just like despair, or there's an element of joy or hope in all of the videos in small and different ways, which actually seamlessly brings me on to my next question, which is around humor, because one of the most refreshing things that we saw in the work, and that we're seeing sort of in a lot of people's reaction to this situation, is this ability to kind of find, if quite a dark humor, but definitely at some levity in this experience as well. And I know, Bryony, for you, and also, I mean, for several of you, but even Patrizia, and also with Purple Moon, I found that even when you're dealing with some of these subject matters, there's a lighter touch in some ways, how you present it. And I was wondering, perhaps starting with Bryony, it would be good to hear about how you came to that, and also whether did it feel sort of strange to find humor and some sort of lightness in this, or was it something you really sort of threw yourself into?
I mean, I think for me, it's kind of a natural go-to, because that's kind of what my background is in. So comedy is always a sort of response for me anyway, or at least like a lens through which I look at things. And particularly, I'd say with this, like, there was just so much absurdism in it anyway, that was just inherent in the kind of situation. That seemed quite easy to kind of draw from that. And for me, doing the thing with the animals, it didn't really start out like that, to be honest. I kind of had a more serious idea. I started out thinking like, oh, this is such a big thing, and so many things I wanted to say and do. And as I started doing them, it just didn't feel really right. And I was like, well, what do I actually want to do? And what I really wanted to do was interact with my space that I'd been in for ages in like a really different and bizarre way. So it sort of stimulated for me just wanting to sit on the kitchen counter as a bird. So, and also, like, I would say, like, living on the boat and looking at the water, I suppose similar, that kind of desire for freedom as well. What this water that you actually can't really get in because it is so E. coli heavy. That desire to actually just kind of transgress those boundaries a little bit. But yeah, I would also say, like, there was just loads of natural absurdism that I found in the situation. Like, obviously my situation is a bit unique in that I live on a boat on the river, but I sort of, for the first time, was in one place for a really long time. Normally you move around quite frequently, and there was loads of really strange things that sort of came out of being in one place. Like, we were just underneath a load of flats that had all these balconies out, and anyone that's standing on any of their balconies, even if they were talking really quietly, you could hear them like it was being amplified. So you could hear all of these really intense conversations. And with the fish thing, there was like a big fish, like an enormous fish that was in the river. Maybe it was a carp or something that had been dumped. And there was a guy on one of the balconies that I was calling business guy because he was always on the phone on a business. And I remember just hearing morning, like, leaning his balcony and being like, morning, big bastard. And just like having a relationship with the little the fish that was there. And so that was really, so there was loads of humour in it. And there was one guy that every day he would come from his flat and get into the river and swim across the river and get out the other side into the park where quite a lot of people were doing their exercise, and nobody noticed. And he was soaking wet and he'd just walk through the park back to his flat. So there was loads of really strange things that were quite funny anyway to me about the whole thing. I mean, obviously it's like a great tragedy, and there's loads of sort of levity in the situation, but there's also all these little moments of sort of, I guess, comedy and bizarre human moments.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's true, how it almost, like, everyone talked about this is like what the world on pause looks like. And that was one of the most exciting things, I think, was to see sort of rebuild these connections. And I mean, there were all the countless memes of like, nature is healing, and then it'll be a picture of, I don't know, like a swan in a filthy canal and things like that. But I think it did sort of remind people that, you know, we walk around thinking humans are the big I am, and now it's taken this one tiny little bacteria, this little virus, and I think it does it shifts our relationship definitely to the sort of environment around us. But yeah, thinking about sort of human connection as well, I guess, and how we've sort of tried to make sense of this. Patrizia, I was wondering if you could chat a bit about, because I think your work is quite striking also in that your piece is probably one of the least that sort of specifically looked at like COVID, but actually took this as an opportunity to reflect on ideas around class and race, and how we sort of link with one another, but again with the light touch of a dinner party setting. Could you talk a bit about your process with that?
Yeah, well, I think there's so much going on from my point of view. It's COVID was one of the many things, and then I can't believe actually still that how many issues all of a sudden, one on top of each other, and then my personal circumstances, and so I think, I don't know, it feels like I have to say I haven't been sleeping very well for quite a long time. So this is you know, because there is so much, and we got no idea how to sort it out, what's going to happen, and there are these old issues and this very eradicated kind of problems with society, and everything is quite incredibly serious and very 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 overwhelming. But I think it's just like I feel like I want to reach out to people, and I think it's important to have a conversation. I think it's very, very important to have a conversation. And a lot of time I got no idea how to manage this conversation. and the meal came about just, well, because I'm Italian, I want to play with that cliche, because often we are categorized, we are we are identified through this stereotypes, and I thought, okay, I'm gonna play this stereotype of myself, the Italian woman, the cook for everybody, and she's crazy about food, blah blah blah. But as well, is this true that through food while eating, and the actual process went on for hours. So if I don't know if you can see the light in the video towards the end, is quite dark outside. So we spent quite a few hours eating and chatting, and the conversations were very intense at some point. And of course, it's been very complicated to decide what to put in and what to leave out. To the point that I thought I better don't put anything in because it's, it's more about the idea of wanting to have a conversation. That was my, and I think humor is a bonus. We have that because sometimes life is too much, and I can't personally, is the only solution I have. I can't go on taking things seriously, because otherwise I'm gonna have an heart attack or something. So I have to find that kind of level of amusement, which is I think we can see it when things become too much, then it flip over. It's out of our control. I can't do anything at all apart from laughing about it. So yeah, it has been very interesting and very complex, actually, the whole process. And as well, I really wanted to highlight the fact that I'm not a filmmaker. And I think it comes out very clearly. It's so rough.
No, I like that. I think I mean, let's call it an aesthetic, and then it makes it official and totally intended. Yes. But I do think that kind of, because of the fact that, we're used to seeing things through the lens of an iPad or an iPhone, and the fact that's kind of a very normal, way to be presented or to see things. And yeah, I think, and this is something I'd love to hear from Cheryl or Vinesh as well, is this thing around balancing the sort of the serious with the humorous. So I know in the first monologue in Rewind in Purple Moon's performance, there are these sort of hilarious references to, like, oh well, my dating life is on hold, or what was there of it to begin with, and then again the middle monologue being this sort of very humorously, it's sort of delivered story of, can you believe I got elbowed, but then actually you think this is a conversation about someone essentially being assaulted so that they could get toilet paper, and the kind of hysteria that we saw earlier on. But yeah, I don't know if Cheryl or Vinesh, who would like to chime in on this, is just sort of reflecting on how you managed that and how you came to work in this way.
I'm going to hand over to Vinesh, but I would like to say that the comedy aspect was really natural for the group who kind of came up with the ideas. It was kind of immediate when they were discussing it that it was going to be light in some aspects. Vinesh's piece was probably the most somber, but it still had a lightness in its relatability. So I'm going to hand over to Vinesh.
Yeah, sorry, I was just going to say, like, well, when the whole group spoke together and was like, what do we want to do? What situations we want to 3 of us wanted to perform and 3 of us wanted to write, and we was like, okay, let's go in pairs, and in our pairs, let's talk about what affected us in terms of the writer and the actor and what happened during lockdown. And for me, it was like, I'm really getting bored during lockdown, but this is the time for me to reflect and actually get an aspect of writing involved. So I was like, to the writer who I worked with was Rose, and I was like to her, this is what I'm doing, this is what I did, this is what I gained out of this experience, and I found this as a phenomenal thing, but at the same time, I want to go back on track to where I was in March, before the lockdown happened. And then, so she wrote this idea down, and she sent it back to me, and I was just like, you created a gold mine here. I love everything that you've written down. And like, I didn't even tell her specific things that happened, but from her writing, it correlated to me specifically. I could see that it related to her as an artist as well. And it was the same for the other two performances. I really, I didn't see the other two until today. And the humour aspect, I really enjoyed that we didn't go down the dark and depressing route of like talking about how, don't get me wrong, it did affect me personally of being in this lockdown, and like it was just like the writing was the way I got out of actually being like stuck in a house all day. But the fact that we did something so comedic, and how Cheryl said about my one being so somber, it just worked.
Yeah, I think the balance across the three is great. And I was actually chatting with a colleague at Poplar earlier, and we were saying that there's a seriousness to your piece. So we both really related, and obviously being in the industry we're in, we really related to this kind of pragmatism of like, we all have roles. I should be on stage, but right now I'm serving drinks in a pub, and that kind of, and like Patrizia saying about stereotypes, actually saying, you know, especially if you're sort of representing younger people in this, saying, you know, no, we've just got on with it. We've made do with the situation. We're learning new skills, and again, even in something serious, there was a really hopeful, pragmatic element to it that I thought was great.
What I liked about the project we did is the simple fact that none of us in the group actually met up to film. So everything we did was through either Zoom or like communication through WhatsApp. And then if we had to direct something, I would contact Jaka, who's the president of the Purple Moon Drama Youth Board. Every direction she would give me was through WhatsApp and explaining this. And sometimes it's very difficult because maybe the vision she has in her mind is not the same way that I'm picturing it. And that was an aspect that was very hard, but very rewarding at the same time, because we learned a new skill that you don't always have to be in front of each other to create great material. And it just worked, yeah.
Amazing. Well, thanks, Vinesh, because also, just like last time, you've just perfectly queued me up for my next question. It's going to look a lot more rehearsed than it actually is. But that question around how you've made the work, and that obviously, like you're saying, you were all very separate to each other. But now turning to, we're going to sort of chat now to Joel and Jaka and Albert one at a time. Because what was so wonderful about your work was that it was collaborative and it featured lots of people, which was so refreshing to see. And again, that really sort of joyful element. But it would be interesting to hear from you about what it was like as artists coming together and collaborating with other people on this project specifically, but also having spent quite a long time in isolation, and how that sort of felt creatively and practically as well, of how you actually made the work. So let's go to Joel first of all.
Hi. So I think like the first time we actually came together, all of us, to do the recording was on the day itself. So it was I don't know where to go with this actually. I think we were thinking a little bit about the idea of family portraits actually, and that we were trying to sort of create an idea of time travel in a way, and we were trying to create these small snippets of lockdown. And for me, during lockdown, I also joined my local allotment group, and so managed to get one of the guys who was working at the allotment group to come and do this filming. But the first time that we all met was for this one this one day for the recording. I'm not sure what else to say about sort of like the whole community aspect of it and us all coming together. It was really nice because it was an opportunity for me to work with the sound designer that I've worked with before, and so we've got like a really lovely understanding of how to work with each other. I'm not really sure where else to go with that. I'm sorry, Beth.
No, that's okay. It's interesting, I think, because I mean, talking about family portraits, and I think your set as well is quite interesting. You were someone who sort of, you took that domestic, a bit like we were talking about earlier with Akeim and the being at home, but you moved it into the open and things like that. So did you always envisage the work as being something that would happen outside with lots of people, or was there a point when you were thinking, no, this is a solo in my house and that's it? What was that sort of process like?
Well, I think because I was trying to create a dance work in my living room for the large part of the creative process, and so I stubbed my toe almost every single rehearsal, and so everything was very, very contained. And I really wanted to keep that aspect of it feeling nice and contained and it feeling like a living room. But I decided to film it in a wide open space so that you really get a feeling of contrast there. And I think it also it highlights more of a sense of isolation, which at different points in lockdown, despite spending it with flatmates, with my girlfriend, I felt very isolated at different times. Right. And so I was trying to, I guess, highlight that by having the contrast between this big open space and my one little living room with a rug and an armchair.
Oh, well, it worked beautifully. I think it captured that strange contrast of being at home and then also still, even when you are in open space, just feeling quite sort of solitary in it. Albert, thank you for joining us. Also, I didn't get to introduce you at the beginning because of the joys of Zoom technology. But I'm gonna unmute you. There we go.
There we go.
But yeah, so you your music video, which is like ready just to be sent off to MTV, is the most like beautifully produced film. But it would be great to hear. I mean, one of the things I really enjoyed about your work, obviously, is, well, the fact that I can't stop singing the chorus, but also reading the lyrics and seeing those sort of stories coming out through the work. And I was curious to hear about how did all of your collaborators, how did you make the song? Did you sort of write it together, or was it people sort of giving their own parts, or how did it work?
You know what, like we've been as sensitive as we can to just social distancing and like the surreal times that we're all currently facing. So when we initially got the call from you guys, you know, we were really chuffed because prior to the lockdown, as you're aware, Beth, you know, we run an events platform in partnership with Poplar Union, and within that we do artist development. We've created a bit of a family feel to our shows, and for a lot of the artists, you know, it's more than just coming to Poplar Union and getting themselves a gig. You know, we have our partners such as Pulse 88 Radio DJ Dange as one of our resident DJs, and you know, he often will scout talent from the shows and take them onto radio, and we try and provide as much opportunities outside of just gigging as possible. So for a lot of them, not being able to do that during this lockdown period as a creative has been quite restrictive. And as when we first got the call and we were able to feed out this opportunity to the cohort that usually attend the shows, there was such a massive response of kind of relief and joy and excitement and anticipation, because for a lot of them, they haven't been able to actually create or to do anything musically creative, or even just been given a stimulus to songwrite. For a lot of them, as we all have, you know, just dealing with the fact that a lot of them can't see family, or that can't go to work, haven't been able to socialize properly, you know, it can have an impact on your mental health. And so music is a great way to express yourself. So yeah, we sent out like a broadcast via WhatsApp, made a group, wanted to invite as many of the artists that had been on the shows previously to get involved. We had a fantastic response of about 20 artists, but because of like work schedules and family and things like that, we did get, I think, at least half a dozen who attended, but actually that was in terms of the final product, in terms of the music video. But in terms of artists being able to send in their lyrics to us, if they had access to studio, maybe at home, we were actually able to get quite a lot of artists, and we have an extended version of the single which actually has more artists that have actually been on center stage than the actual video version, which is only, I think, about half a dozen of the artists who were actually able to make the date that we provided them via WhatsApp to actually come meet with our videography and our video production team and actually, create the song that they created. But in terms of, as you back to your question, how we made it, we all wanted to collaboratively bring our talents to the table. So for myself, aside from actually, running center stage, I'm also a producer. So I decided to produce the song, the beat for it. And then I provided it to everybody. Thankfully, everyone heard it and were inspired, and they wanted to actually write about their experiences during lockdown. And the concept was really the same as what we've all had, looking out, looking in, and looking up. And for a lot of them, maybe when they look in, they may be feeling anxiety, maybe depression, or looking out, whether that's through social media and the news. There's a bit of a bleak look, whether it be dealing with COVID and the Black Lives Matter movement and not being able to see family and things like that. So we just allowed them to just express whatever they were feeling during that period of lockdown. And they all came with different angles and different lyrics. It's actually, it's been quite refreshing to actually hear everyone's different experiences. But we were so happy that we could offer them a space, which was still keeping in mind with social distancing measures, allowing them to come in, record their lyrics for those that didn't have access to a studio, and then providing them a date where they could all meet up again. Unfortunately, again, haven't been able to actually meet up together since our last show at Poplar Union, which was, I think, in February. Yeah. So a lot of them haven't seen each other since that time. So this was so nice for them to be able to come together, create something which had meaning, and try and express what it is they want coming out of lockdown. That's really what we wanted to pitch to them. What is it that you want to come out of lockdown with? And together, with all the responses that we got, we decided to title our project Dreams, because, everyone has a dream. And I think for a lot of people who maybe haven't chased their dreams before lockdown, I think lockdown has now helped people to really not take life for granted and to really just sort of embrace every second of every day. And so we thought it fitting to use the word dream as the title for the project, and just allow anyone and everyone that was involved just to express themselves freely. And yeah, that's what we got out of it.
Great. Well, I mean, it's a brilliant piece of work, and we really can't wait to have you guys back. I should have said actually. Yeah, I should have mentioned at the beginning of this. So a huge motivator for this entire project and the sort of commission was that it was working with people or artists who we either sort of had a existing relationship with, or who were due to perform at Poplar Union over the months where we've been locked down. And now we're just we're dreaming about the future and getting everyone back in the building. And Centre Stage will definitely be one of those people. But so just that idea actually again of sort of expressing ourselves brings me onto Jaka, because I know your pieces, it was an improvisation. It was sort of one of the most purest forms in a way of expression. yeah, so if you could tell us a bit about what your experience was like of making the piece that you submitted, yeah, and how people responded, I guess, so instinctively and in the moment.
Yes, thank you so much. It's nice to see you all. It's actually a funny story. The whole idea of the project started as an online idea. So I didn't know about the commission, and I got in touch with Will from Poplar Union just by coincidence. And I felt really strongly about what was happening in the community that improvises just with voice, with a cappella improvisation. So since March, we have kind of very quickly find our way online and find a way to collaborate on Zoom, although we can't sing in time. But we kind of felt so strongly about the need to continue to express ourselves that we started to meet very regularly. So my idea, first of all, was just to try and do something out of that and try to connect with people that would be willing to improvise on Zoom, instrumentalists and singers. And that was my idea that I went to Will with. And then he said, you know what, we have something else coming up that I didn't know about, and you might be a good person for it. And so I started with that online idea. And then I was noticing that the schedule of the people that I most wanted on the project started converging. So there was this window that started to open in July. There were a couple of people that were going on a sabbatical afterwards. There were a couple of people that are usually in the US at the time, and they were in London by coincidence. And at some point, I just decided to try and make it work and try to bring us all together in the same room. We actually met on a boat called Soup Studios that has a beautiful live room, and we only had 3 hours. We didn't talk about anything in advance. We just met there, and we did a sound check, and then standing in a circle, and then just let anything that wanted to arise. And we actually ended up recording 12 songs. So hopefully we're going to be releasing an album, fingers crossed, in the autumn. But this first piece, it started with this beautiful, exquisite solo by Sylvia, and it's just, to me, it reminds me of a sprout of a plant. So kind of a beginning, kind of a very gentle beginning that sort of questions its existence and its reasons to be around, and then it grows, and then first 2 people join just with sort of backing vocals. And then everyone joins very instinctively at the right moment to support that message of kind of allowing ourselves to nurture any small idea that is floating around, or it might be a feeling, or it might be a fellow person. And it just really touched me. When I was listening to it, I always got teary-eyed when I was mixing it, and I loved the piece, and I chose it because of that. And I really enjoy the process of first meeting the people and singing with them in person, and then working with mixing engineer online. And it just kind of grew and grew, and it's one of those projects when at the end, when I finished the mixing, I was 100% happy, which doesn't happen that often. But I think I felt that way because of the way it was created and what it meant, and that feeling that it was carrying with it.
Yeah, that's great. And I think you can feel that sort of emotion when you watch the piece. It's been really interesting today. A lot of people have been sort of messaging me as the videos have gone up, and with yours there was definitely a theme of that gave me goosebumps. I've watched it 3 times now. It's so sort of moving and really intimate, I think, and there's something even in the way that you sort of recorded it that I think it really spoke to that feeling that people were really missing during lockdown, was this thing of just being close to people, sharing a space with people. Yeah, it conjured that beautifully. So I mean, we're sort of honing in around my last question. I should add, anyone who is watching at home, if you have any questions, please do, you can post them in the chat, and I'd love to hear from you, people who are watching, so do post away and I can ask your questions to our artists. But one last thing I sort of wanted to speak about was a bit more broad, and I was going to sort of aim it at specific people, but I think it would be interesting just to hear from anyone who wants to sort of speak to this. When Will, our music programmer at Poplar Union, we sort of and ahed about the idea of the theme, And when we came to looking out, looking in, looking up, we felt that there was a level of sort of optimism, I guess, in the idea of finishing on this upward sort of thing. But generally, we wanted it to be as open to interpretation. We didn't want anything that would specifically reference sort of, it has to be about coronavirus or whatever it may be. Oh, apparently my internet is unstable. Let's see how we go. But so it was interesting to see, like we've mentioned, that the work that's come back has dealt with anything from sort of lockdown to mental health to the Black Lives Matter movement to class. I'd be interested to hear from anyone really who wants to join in as sort of what was it in those words, looking out, looking in, looking up, what was it that led you to what you made in the end, or how did you interpret that kind of brief? Anyone who, if you want to just wave your arms enthusiastically, I can come to you, or I can just pick on you. Whoa, okay, we'll go to Bryony and then work our way around.
I think for me it was such a good brief because it was simultaneously super broad and quite specific, which was really helpful, I found. So you could kind of choose any aspect of it or try and accomplish all three, I suppose. And just for me, just the idea of looking around you was the main thing that I suppose I drew inspiration from, and then realizing what were the things I was looking at. And I was talking to a friend of mine after I'd made the video and I showed it her, and she was saying that she'd spent the whole of lockdown just looking in her garden, and her whole sort of gossip had revolved around what was happening with the squirrels in her garden. And so this idea of like looking around you and sort of seeing these things that you hadn't seen before, for me that was like a big part of it, I suppose. But yeah, I thought it was a really great brief because it was very flexible.
Great. Who was waving enthusiastically? I think Sangeeta. Let's go Sangeeta and then Akeim. Go ahead, Sangeeta. Oh, you're on mute. I think I can unmute you. It wouldn't be a Zoom meeting if someone didn't talk whilst on mute.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. So for me, it was quite, it was very broad. And when it is broad, like most creative people, I kind of go off on all these tangents because I can do like a million things and oh my God, I can do this, I can do this. So it was really broad, and I thought that was the beauty of it because it got me to think in very different ways. And for me, what brought it back to kind of looking in was what felt kind of really true to where I was within that journey, and kind of looking in within my space and then looking at the world, and kind of what the connection was for me was where that does that. I feel like I'm being very vague, but that's kind of what it was. It was a little bit like that. Quite last minute almost putting it together. So I kept writing bits. And I literally happened to be walking past that field where I shot it. And I was like, I had no idea how I was going to add this, because I'm not a filmmaker, as you know, or a videographer. I'm a writer. And I was like, oh, I'm just going to take my camera phone and just shoot myself saying this. And I walked past that field on that particular day, and the light was this kind of orange light. And it was just stunning. But something about it felt quite desolate and expansive at the same time, which is kind of how the piece felt for me. So I literally asked my friend who had an iPhone to say, can you just shoot this thing? And we literally shot it in like, I don't know, 10 minutes, I think. And that was it. So it kind of came together, but I think the brief and its openness allowed that process to kind of happen organically, I think.
Okay. Yeah, and I think that light actually in yours, and again, to use our lovely aesthetic word, I felt your piece had a real sense of nostalgia in a way to it, and it had that dreamy element, which was sort of interesting, because I think people talk in a really nostalgic way about life before COVID, as if that was something that happened decades ago, not months or weeks ago. And I think there was something quite and it happened a lot in a lot of these different pieces. It conjures these ideas around time, memory, loss, how we relate to sort of a before time and a present time. I think, yeah, that came across beautifully. I'm going to try to make sure I'm speaking to everyone. I think Akeim, Joel, and Jaka. Let's go to Akeim.
Yeah.
And Patrizia.
I really love the brief. It was probably the best brief I've ever seen.
I mean, you really don't all have to say this. You can say it was terrible and limiting and horrible.
I'm just saying the truth. It was great because it was so open, but still had a real great direction to it in the terms of the fact that it's something about looking, and looking means to observe. You can look out, but you can also look within. And yeah, you can also then you can take into account what you're looking at and from outside, and how you're feeling inside, and how the two correlate. So that was a part of my reasoning for doing what I did, because in mine I was like, there's a lot of me being in bed, and that happened quite a lot in COVID, in the lockdown, just like needing to get up and do stuff, but this sense of, oh, there's, you have all this time, so do you really need to? But then there's so much processes going on within that you need to do something outside in order to integrate whatever the stuff within is. So that's pretty much how I felt the brief. Yeah.
That's it. Great. Joel, do you want to go next?
Yeah, I was going to say, sorry, Beth, I didn't really use the brief.
Okay, we'll cut this bit out of the recording, and I'm deleting your video from YouTube.
Oh, brilliant. Okay, cool.
No, that's fine.
So I more thought of kind of like the hobbies that I took up during lockdown. And there was one which seemed very universal. Everyone seemed to do this. Everyone started jogging.
Yeah.
And this was fashionable for about 2 or 3 weeks, and then everyone stopped. But so I did that. And then I took up knitting as well. And so my two things were knitting and jogging. And the reason that I really liked both things is because I seemed to kind of enter a weird meditative state when I was jogging or when I was knitting. And I felt like I was daydreaming or even having this outer body experience. And so even though, I might be stuck on my living room sofa where I spent more time than I ever have done in my entire life, that I was able to journey outside my living room and think about the past, think about the present, think about the future. And so that was more what I was trying to reflect. However, looking back on the brief of the project, I think that fits in quite nicely, because I think when you think about jogging, when you think about knitting, when you think about what I'm saying about meditation and daydreaming, I think it kind of encapsulates all of those different ideas. And so whether or not that is a happy accident, I don't know. But it seems it frames it nicely, I think, anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, great. I mean, let's say that it was all planned, and that the brief informed every decision you made. Yeah, Jaka, did you throw the brief in the bin and then just make something else as well?
Sort of. To be honest, we did, but what Joel said about the meditative state really reminded me of how much I missed personally singing with other people in person for those couple of months, from March till July, and how the Zoom experience was so different, and the resonance that you got when you're in the same physical space, and the feeling that you get all over your body. It doesn't matter how simple it is, even if you're just singing one note all together, it's so special. But I guess the brief to me starts with looking in and then looking out, because when you improvise, you kind of don't have any plan at all, and the things that come out might be unexpected. They might be about something that you might have seen or looked at, but it might be also your inner life and your inner personal emotions. So it relates to the ability to let go of wanting for something specific to come out and just let it be whatever it wants to be. And then looking up, I guess I always feel like that when I improvise, which is that you're also singing towards a bigger mystery in life, that it's something that is either above us or below us or all around us or in us, it doesn't matter, but it's that small pocket that allows us to, you know, not have everything figured out, and allowing this at least a bit of space for something that just wants to happen in the moment, that is not planned and that we don't know of, and we don't know what the result is going to be.
Great. Yeah, I'm liking the spontaneity of what you're doing. And Patrizia.
I just want to add that I think the brief somehow kept the whole thing in this positive level for me. I think there is something quite positive about these three actions, these three predicaments, and it feels like you cannot end up on a bad note, if you know what I mean. So in a strange sort of way, because you listen to the brief and then you forget about it, and then you go on and do the stuff. But somehow I think it influenced probably, I don't know if everybody, but for sure my way of making the piece of work you saw, because there is this kind of inherent kind of positive feeling about it. That's what I want to say. Thank you.
Great. Ending on a note of enforced positivity, which was exactly what we set out to do. No, there was no agenda. Great. Well, I'm just aware of the time. Before we go, I don't have any more questions, but I will throw it over. Does anyone have any lasting sort of comments or ideas or thoughts they want to leave with, or anything else they want to say about the work that you've made? Was that a hand, Cheryl? Yeah, great, Cheryl.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I appreciated having the deadline and making art for art's sake. I feel like it was really amazing for me just to have a project that galvanized these young leaders that I'm working with. And there wasn't really an agenda beyond, okay, there's something that we can be part of here during this time when we're also isolated and are processing so much. So it's almost like even in the making of it was part of the processing of what we're going through. So I was just really happy to sort of be a part of it, and it sort of ran and had its own life. And even hearing Vinesh talk, it's just so amazing to hear about, you know, the ingenuity and the enforced creativity that had to come, that happens when you have a problem that you have to solve somehow. So yeah, just to appreciate the deadline and, you know, a small amount of resource, and we were able to create this beast. So, this beautiful beast, you know, this thing that we're all a part of. So yeah, thanks.
Great. Thanks so much, Cheryl. It's lovely to hear, and it really it's great to know that sort of came across, because I know it was something that Will and I were like, look, we need to do something. We want to support artists. I mean, financially with the sort of limited resources we had, but also just I spoke to so many people, and they said, you know, they feel like their creativity had just kind of dried up because you're just making something with no prospect of when it might be shown or where it might be shown or who will see it. And we sort of were just like, let's just make people make stuff. But no, just not in such callous terms, but definitely that was a huge driving force for us, was to hopefully give some kind of space for people to make work, and also to make work with very little stakes, very low stakes, and that we really tried to communicate with all of the people we were working with. Take risk. This isn't about making, like Patrizia said, it's not a beautiful, polished film. It's the encounter of the ideas, and it's the process and the failures and the risks of making work, which was really what we wanted to be put on show, basically. Great. It's 1:08, so I am going to wrap things up. But I just want to say absolutely ginormous thank you to everyone who's here, and to Anna and to Erin for interpreting this so beautifully. And thank you for being a part of our first ever, but hopefully soon to be annual or possibly even biannual digital festival. So a huge Zoom wave and clap to all of you. And I also just wanted to take this opportunity to announce just two things. One is that we've got a second day of the festival. Another 9 videos will be launching tomorrow from 10 a.m. till 6 p.m. every hour, through till 10 a.m. till 6 p.m. every hour, 9 videos. And then at 7 o'clock tomorrow, we will have this similar sort of setup, a Q&A on Zoom with the artists whose work has been shown that day. So that's my one thing that I had to say. My second thing that I had to say is that we are very excited to announce we're actually launching a second commission with help from the Arts Council, and this will be an open call out to anyone and everyone who would like to go through this hellish process that you've all just undergone, of making a piece of work, and that will culminate in another festival at the end of November, which might even happen at Poplar Union in a building with an audience. Dare I even say it out loud? But yes, those are my 2 announcements. And just to say, thank you once again, and thank you everyone who is watching. Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you for having us.
Let's all do our 2-handed Zoom wave. Bye. Thank you.